Welcome back. There's a live look outside on the Oregon coast. A nice view there from our Inn at Spanish Head Resort Hotel camera in Lincoln City. Thanks for watching Afternoon Live. If you find yourself popping antacids more often than you'd like, or you're on a prescription to battle your reflux, our next guest says there's a better, more natural solution. Here to share more, we welcome back Dr. Cindy Howard. Great to see you.
Great to be back. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about reflux and GERD. A lot of people struggle with this, and the PPI medications a lot of people are taking long term. What are those drugs and how do they work?
Right. So long term is not a great thing, but that's typically what happens. And you're looking at drugs like Nexium, Prevacid, Prilosec, a lot of these over the counters and sometimes even prescription medications. And the whole purpose is to decrease stomach acid, preventing then the GERD. However, sometimes we don't always want to even decrease stomach acid. We're actually supposed to have some stomach acid.
So let's talk about some new concerns with the PPIs, especially with long-term use, some possible links to dementia.
There was a recent study that just came out, and they evaluated patients who developed dementia and the certain percentage of people that were using these PPIs long term. And it's actually quite fascinating. There were two main things that occurred. One is we were seeing a disturbance in amyloid metabolism, which clearly affects cognitive function. But real simply, too, is actually lowering levels of B12. And there's a huge connection between dementia and the deficiency of the vitamin B12.
Okay, so you have a lot of great ideas to take a really holistic approach, which first of all, we're talking about how do we even diagnose what's going on? It might not be a reflux issue to begin with.
Right. And that's where some of the challenges come on, because a lot of times this is done based only on symptoms, right? So burping, belching, bloating, discomfort, heartburn, pain, all of these can be signs and symptoms. And without actually an invasive test most of the time to measure the acid in the stomach, we may or may not get the proper diagnosis. There's also some great testing that's done in blood work to give an indication if we're not producing enough of this HCl in the stomach. So for instance, in a comprehensive metabolic panel, we have total protein levels. What make that up are albumin and globulins, which are proteins in the body that we produce. And when the albumin is real low and the globulin is real high, that can be an indication for low stomach acid. We also typically see low calcium and low chloride, which also can indicate that as well. So sometimes a blood test being less invasive will give us a better indication that that is what is actually going on.
Okay, so we actually have some ways that we can just improve our digestion day to day, some simple steps that we can take just as we eat regularly.
Right. And they're really simple and things we don't think about. And the first one is just chew your food. As crazy as that's going to sound, you know, we're in an environment now, 2 bites, swallow. We're always going and moving. So we're in a hurry. And we're actually supposed to masticate or chew our food to the point that it's liquid. So lots of bites, lots of chewing. Put down that fork or that spoon in between. That'll allow us, you know, a little bit more time to digest. We also want to be careful with the types of foods that we're eating as well. So a very high carbohydrate diet can cause this problem. A low protein diet can also contribute. Sometimes it's even as simple as certain foods. I know in a previous segment we were talking about gluten-free cookies versus the glutinous cookies. And sometimes even just getting that gluten out of the diet, removing dairy, sometimes even seafood and peanuts can be triggered. And certainly high acid foods also can play a role.
Okay, and you hear things about not eating too close to bedtime. Is that true? Could that be helpful?
It can. So the digestive process actually really slows while we're sleeping. So as a general rule, I always tell patients the last meal you consume should be a good 3.5-ish hours prior to laying down to rest, because you don't actually want things sitting still, so to speak, while you're sleeping, right? You want things to have moved through the digestive system a little bit quicker. So that it doesn't cause inflammation, get stuck, et cetera, causing more discomfort for people later at night or first thing in the morning.
That makes sense. Do you ever find that stress can contribute to these types of stomach issues as well?
Oh, stress contributes to everything, right? Like, you know, and it's easy to say, just don't be stressed out, we'll feel great. And that may be a little bit true. But when we've got an increase in what we call cortisol, which is a stress hormone, that's our fight or flight response. And when our body doesn't have that mechanism working well, where we can combat all the things that we're exposed to in the world, we don't do as well, right? So stress is always going to be a contributing factor. And a lot of people will report that when they feel stressed out, they get an exacerbation of symptoms. So If that's you, we have to start to pay attention to de-stressing, especially over the holiday season.
Yeah, that's a good time to kind of check in and think about that factor. What about some other more natural or safer alternatives to PPIs in a long-term setting?
Sure. So if we can't get to the underlying cause and we're still having symptoms, there's some great natural remedies that work really well. One is apple cider vinegar, 1 to 2 teaspoons a day, and sometimes it's before a meal, sometimes it's after a meal, sometimes it's in the middle of the meal. We find that patients get different types of results depending on when they use it, so there may be a little bit experimentation that might work. Certainly some great digestive enzymes to help you break down your food. If you really are low in stomach acid, then instead of using the over-the-counters that deplete the B12, we can use something called betaine HCl or pepsin. That is actually an acid. It's a gastric juice that helps to replace the acid in the stomach. And certainly from a soothing standpoint, there's products that contain like aloe vera, slippery elm bark, L-glutamine, ginger. Those are just a few real great over-the-counter remedies to help soothe the discomfort.
Great information. Always good to know about all of our options. Thank you so much. It was great to see you.
Same here. My pleasure. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. And we'll have more information on this on our website at katu.com. We'll be right back with more Afternoon Live right after this.